No, I always now pray to God. Thanks, always thanks to God. We are alive.
The pictures are terrifying. Now imagine being in the front seat. Tonight, we hear from the women who incredibly walked away with only cuts and bruises. 1 minute, they're driving down the 410. The next, they're staring at a sheet of plywood hanging in front of their faces. Now, everyone is trying to figure out what happened and who is to blame. Our Adrian Chung is live for us tonight, just over the Gardner. And Adrian, you spoke with the family who survived this brush with tragedy.
Yeah, Kristen, they're now at home nursing their injuries. Luckily, none of it is serious or life-threatening. And while this happened in Brampton, it really could happen at any highway, including the Gardner just over my shoulder, especially when you consider the speed that cars are going at, that really any debris makes it a very dangerous situation for drivers. And the OPP says it's incredible that nobody was killed here.
The difference between life and death in this case is a matter of inches. This after a piece of plywood hurtled through the air and through the windshield of this car on Highway 410. The people inside the car alive to tell the tale.
I realized, okay, oh my God, this thing has happened. And at the moment, I can't say anything. I just stopped talking and I was shocked.
She says the piece of wood came off the back of a truck in front of them. They had no time to react. Covered in glass and blood, they say few drivers stopped to help.
No one. Yeah, I'm surprised, like the car is just going. They just want to cross the car. They don't want to stuck in the traffic.
This is the car that Jaspreet was driving, and she says it was just a matter of seconds that she saw the piece of plywood fly through the air and go right through the windshield.
Yeah, within a second.
Glass shards flew everywhere, and the piece of plywood hit Jaspreet's arm. They have some cuts and bruises, but no serious injuries. This woman, having moved to Canada just days ago, is in complete shock.
A piece of glass all over the body, here and on face, eyelashes all.
Did it cut your nose?
Cut on nose and cheek.
The OPP paid a visit to the family home to check on them. Witnesses reported the license plate of the truck and where the piece of wood came flying from. Drivers, they say, have a serious responsibility.
It could have been so much worse, and this is something that we just need to remind people: if you're going to be carrying any kind of load on your vehicle, on a trailer, it needs to be properly secured and strapped down. You're going down the highway at 100 kilometers per hour, you're catching a lot of wind.
Now, the OPP have made contact with the owner of the truck where the wood was seen flying from. They're trying to investigate to figure out who was driving the truck at the time, and at this point, they're not ruling out charges could possibly be laid. Chris?
All right, thanks for this tonight, Adrian.
It's a street known for its gridlock, and starting tomorrow, it's going to be losing 2 lanes. I'll tell you why those 2 lanes on York Street are going to be closed coming up.
An update on that Vaughn crash late Tuesday night that sent 5 teens to hospital. Police say the surviving boy, who is critically injured, is improving in hospital and is now considered stable. The 15-year-old was one of 2 passengers who suffered life-threatening injuries. The other, a 16-year-old boy, died yesterday. The 17-year-old driver and 2 remaining passengers received less severe injuries. Their car hit a tree when it failed to make a turn on a rural stretch of road. And Toronto police have released pictures of 2 suspects wanted for a New Year's attack on a man near Queen and Bathurst. They say one of these men knocked the victim unconscious and the other punched him again while he was on the ground. They then took off in a newer model blue Dodge Charger. The victim, a 36-year-old man, was found unconscious and bleeding heavily on the sidewalk. He remains in life-threatening condition. At the time, police said they believe this was a random attack. A 21-year-old man has been seriously injured after an SUV crashed into a bus stop this morning.
I'm still shaking. Yeah. I was waiting to turn left, watching the oncoming traffic, and behind me to my right, on the inside lane, I heard a bang. And I just turned, I saw the car face the other way and was going to call 911, but the police car was right behind us.
It happened near Finch and Steeles in Brampton just before 7:30. The Infiniti SUV veered off the road and into the shelter where the man was waiting for a bus. Paramedics rushed him to a nearby hospital in life-threatening condition. He is now stable, but his injuries are considered serious. In Toronto, it's a strip of road that's already gridlocked during rush hour, but just wait until tomorrow. That's when a major construction project will partially close York Street between Bremner and Lakeshore. Farah Morelli is live in that area for us tonight. And Farah, this is right near Union Station, right near Scotiabank, and it will be closed for a long, long time.
It really will be, Chris. This is a very busy area. It's 6 o'clock, it's rush hour. Take a look over my shoulder. This is the traffic most people can expect for people trying to get onto the Gardiner. Take 2 lanes of traffic out of this equation and you can only imagine what it's going to look like. These lanes are being closed because construction is starting on an extension of the path. It's going to be connecting these 2 buildings behind me, 16 York and the 2 ICE condos, to Maple Leaf Square just across the street, so it'll be connected to the larger path network. The city is now advising drivers who take this route to take any other route. Take Bay Street, take Simcoe, take the TTC if you can, because this all starts tomorrow. If you've ever left downtown Toronto at rush hour, this is a familiar sight. Painfully slow traffic on York Street to get onto the Gardiner. It'll be rolling a lot slower come tomorrow. Construction is starting on an extension to the path network, and that means 2 of these lanes on York Street will be shut down. It's news that came as a surprise to some taxi drivers today outside Scotiabank Arena. They're going to make it single lane in each direction starting tomorrow until 2020.
Oh, really? It will hurt then.
It's maybe the traffic a lot. The one way everybody come out from the highway, the Gardiner Express, come to inside the downtown. There's the traffic a lot.
It'll be pretty bad for the traffic for sure.
If everybody just takes a deep breath, we'll get through this.
The city says this is a project that was approved 10 years ago. It said it looked at all other options, but this was the best.
There will be delay. We all know, driving it all the time, that section of York Street is congested during the PM rush outbound every day now. It was felt that the half road closure for the 16-month was preferable, and council supported us in that.
One of the first projects was started over here, which was the Air Canada Centre.
Dermot Sweeney is an architect who has worked on several buildings on this stretch of York Street, starting back in the 1990s.
Other than Roundhouse Park, as you get over to CN Tower, most of this was gravel parking lots.
Is there a way to plan better in advance to avoid these kinds of closures, or when you're doing an underground tunnel, is it kind of inevitable?
So those things were planned well in advance. The connection of most of these buildings was thought about at least well in advance. And the path connections, I think, make everything a lot more accessible. And certainly a lot better for transit riders.
The city is encouraging regular drivers of York Street to consider just that, taking transit if possible. And if that's not an option, maybe pack a little patience on your drive home. Now, Chris, one of the things the city says it's going to be doing is looking at future construction projects to make sure they don't compound with the work that's going to be done here and the traffic that's going to ensue. It also says that starting Monday, it's going to start monitoring the flow of traffic on York Street, and if needed, it'll request additional traffic officers to direct traffic and help some of the cars that might be running the red lights or going through. So right now, it's a wait and see to find out what this stretch of road is going to look like tomorrow.
All right, well, thanks for this tonight, Farah.
She's a teenage tennis player from Mississauga who just gained a lot more fans, beating the number 3 in the world.
I can't believe it right now. I mean, I've dreamt of playing on this stage against top players, and now I'm here. I played against one of the best, and I won, so really, I don't even know what to say right now.
I'm Lorenda Redikoff. Coming up, I'll tell you more about Bianca Andreescu, who takes on Venus Williams in her next match.
Time now for a first look at your weather forecast with Nick Cernkovich. And Nick, that overnight snow didn't last very long.
No, it didn't. Bit of icy road conditions last night. I know I took a drive out, and just as the temperatures were fluctuating around that 0 mark, we had some ice. In total, Toronto had 3 centimeters of snow. Markham had about 3 centimeters of snow as well. So that was right in the range of what we were looking at. And today, a bit of a slow melt as temperatures hovered again around that 0 mark. So here's where we're sitting right now. 0 degrees in the city of Toronto. We did peak at 1 degree earlier on. Now, one thing I would mention, though, is that with any of the stuff that had melted and perhaps refreezing tonight, we could be looking at some icy roads again for the evening hours tonight. There's a look at current temperatures. You factor in the winds. Feels like about -4, -5 across the region. Next 24 hours, here's how it plays out. Down to -2, and again, watch for the risk for some icy roads tonight. Winds about 20 kilometers per hour, but it's that southwest wind that indicates we're driving in some warmer temperatures, and we will see them. In fact, by tomorrow afternoon, we're looking at a high of 5 degrees, and that's well above the seasonal mark, and winds again about 20 kilometers per hour out of the southwest. So here's the interesting thing about this is that when you look at the trend, you know, it doesn't just stay at 5, it goes up and down and up and down. And it is a little cliche to say it's a roller coaster ride in terms of temperatures. But here's a bit of a spoiler alert for you for the next 7 days in terms of our forecast. We stay warm and then we drop right down, and then we go back up and we drop right down again. So some wild weather in terms of the temperatures, but we're also watching the potential for a snow-rain mix on Monday to kick off the school week. I'll have details on that coming up.
Sometimes cliches are true.
That's right.
Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
This is the day Democrats in the U.S. have been long waiting for, and Donald Trump has likely been dreading. A new Congress was sworn in today, and Democrats have taken control of its lower house. It's a sea change that ends the Republican monopoly on power in all 3 branches of the U.S. government. Megan Fitzpatrick reports.
A major shift of power played out on Capitol Hill today as the Democrats took over the House of Representatives, and they put Donald Trump on notice. They're promising to bring more oversight and accountability to his administration. They intend to launch investigations, and they'll have subpoena power to help them do it. They could go after his tax returns and some of his business interests to see if he's profiting personally from being president. Trump has said if Democrats do go after him, it will amount to presidential harassment. Democrats also want to show they can govern, though, especially with the 2020 election on the horizon already. They have a legislative agenda, but it could be an uphill battle to get it accomplished, given that Republicans still control the Senate and the White House. It will be up to Nancy Pelosi to guide the Democrats in the House. She was re-elected Speaker, the powerful position she held the last time her party was in charge of the House. After she was sworn in, she said she knows she has her work cut out for her.
We have no illusions that our work will be easy and that all of us in this chamber will always agree. But let each of us pledge that when we disagree, we respect each other and we respect the truth.
Some of the items on the Democrats' legislative agenda include climate change and health care. Pelosi also said her party will immediately introduce bills to put an end to the partial government shutdown that's dragged on for almost 2 weeks now. The Democrats' proposal to fund the affected government departments does not include the $5.6 billion that Trump wants to build a wall at the Mexican border. When the Democrats pass the bills, they'll go to the Senate. And the leader there, Mitch McConnell, has said he won't put them to a vote unless he knows Trump will sign off on them, which the president has signaled he won't. The impasse over the government shutdown could be a sign of more gridlock to come in this new era of divided government in Washington. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Washington.
An update to a story we've been following all week. The Russian news agency Interfax says Paul Whelan, a retired U.S. Marine who was born here in Canada, has now been charged with spying. Whelan was detained by Russian authorities last Friday. His family says he was in Moscow for a wedding. The U.S. ambassador in Russia says he has visited Whelan at Moscow's detention center. Yesterday in Brazil, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo demanded an explanation and an immediate release if the detention is unwarranted. Allegations of spying between Russia and the U.S. are not new. Relations have deteriorated over Russia's actions in Ukraine and allegations of Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The men accused of murdering journalist Jamal Khashoggi appeared in court today in Saudi Arabia. Officials say prosecutors are seeking the death penalty for some of the men charged in the death of the outspoken critic. Natasha Fatah has more.
11 men are accused of being involved in the disappearance and death of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The suspects were in court today as the trial began in the capital, Riyadh. No names have been released, but the prosecution says it is seeking the death penalty for 5 of the 11 suspects. The prosecutor alleges that the group ambushed Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October 2nd, gave him a lethal injection, and then dismembered his body. Khashoggi's remains have never been found, and the killing of this outspoken critic of the Saudi regime has caused a public rift between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Saudi officials say they are still waiting for information and potential evidence from Ankara, and Turkey still insists that the trial of any suspects should be held there under Turkish law. The most contentious issue remains the role of the Saudi crown prince. It is widely reported that he ordered the killing, but Mohammed bin Salman is not on trial and has not been charged. This case continues to be closely watched by journalists, the international community, and human rights activists, many wondering if there will ever be justice or even real answers in the death of Jamal Khashoggi. Natasha Fatah, CBC News, Toronto.
It took a month, but now it's walking on the moon. China's space program has landed its robotic probe. We'll bring you to the far side of the moon after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Deepening tensions between Canada and China aren't delaying a trip by a parliamentary delegation. 4 MPs and 2 senators leave Saturday for Shanghai on a mission to promote business ties. It was planned long before the arrest of 2 Canadians in China. Katie Simpson has the details.
A Conservative MP who is going on the trip to China says he's not nervous. Michael Cooper is part of a 6-member delegation that includes Liberals and Conservatives, which leaves for Shanghai on Saturday. The group will promote business and people-to-people ties between Canada and China, but Cooper fully expects the deepening tensions to come up as an issue. The trip is still going ahead, even though other missions have been postponed, including Tourism Minister Melanie Joly's planned visit to China in December. Cooper says the delegation is taking advice from Global Affairs, which is being shared with the group's leader, Senator Joseph Day.
The message that they sent was that it would be better that we go than not go, notwithstanding the difficult circumstances that have arisen. Delegation was planned before the arrest of the 2 Canadians. And so the message from Global Affairs Canada to Senator Day was that, in fact, it might be a further escalation to cancel.
The Canada-China relationship is at a low point. Canada arrested Huawei CFO at the request of the United States. Shortly after, China detained 2 Canadians, former diplomat Michael Kovrig and entrepreneur Michael Spavor, in what is widely seen as a stab at retribution. For the first time, China's top prosecutor says he's without a doubt both Canadians broke Chinese law and regulations. Today, Canada says that's not the case, calling the arrests arbitrary while demanding their release. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
China has successfully landed a rover on the far side of the moon. That part is the part that never faces Earth, and the mission is seen as a major milestone for a country eager to become one of the leaders in space exploration. Briar Stewart has more.
Scientists with China's National Space Administration watched the final moments before touchdown. The probe landed accurately and steadily, hitting the bullseye, he says. Its target, the largest, deepest, and oldest crater, and it's on the side of the moon that never faces Earth. Because of that, scientists can't communicate directly with the probe. In May, they launched a satellite to relay messages and transmit these images.
This is a fairly new installation for us here at the observatory.
And it's those pictures Edward Bloomer is so excited about. He's an astronomer with Britain's Royal Observatory.
For lots of members of the public, it's going to be really interesting in terms of, fundamentally getting cool pictures back.
Both the lander and the rover are equipped with cameras. They were launched back in December. The entire mission hasn't been well publicized, even in China.
These things are expensive and they are complicated and they take a lot of effort. You don't always necessarily want to be shouting about things that are that expensive and complicated that might not work.
But it did work and is being heralded as a milestone. Unlike other missions, China's probe has landed on a part of the moon that has been unexplored. It's going to be surveying the geology and conducting biological experiments, and experts say it plays into China's greater ambitions to be a space superpower. China wants to position itself as a global leader, both politically and when it comes to scientific and technological advances. Joining the space race is part of meeting that goal.
Well, they want to put humans on the moon, so they want to build a moon base, and that's what they're working towards, and they're collecting data to find out, is that going to be physically possible?
And because this mission has so far been a success, experts say it's only going to encourage more competition to explore the still unseen corners of space. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
An early Leaf game for young hockey fans, including a group of newcomers to Canada, and they invited us to come along. I'm Greg Ross. I'll have their story coming up.
I almost pulled the trigger to my head, but I just like, I thought about it, like there's more to this than like what's happening right now. Like I have a purpose in life.
A program for young people who are struggling and using photography to help them heal. We'll bring you this incredible story coming up in about 20 minutes. There can be an adrenaline rush just watching your first hockey game live. Well, 10 lucky teens experienced that today as the Leafs faced off against Minnesota. But what made this even more special, all of these teens are new to Canada. Greg Ross is live for us tonight at Scotiabank Arena. And Greg, this entire game was about celebrating young fans.
That's right, Chris. This was the next generation game for the Leafs, and again, focusing on those young hockey fans. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of kids around here today, all coming from different programs around the city. Many longtime fans of the game, of course, some new people to hockey, and in the case of the group that I caught up with today, they were actually new to the country.
Of course, today,
a big day for 10 new Canadians.
We get to go inside, we get to watch the Leafs. Woo!
This group, all between the ages of 14 and 18, getting to see the Leafs live and in person for the first time in their own private box. Brittany Jacobs moved here from Jamaica a little over a year ago.
How exciting is this to be here finally?
You know, it's awesome, you know? And the seats, this is amazing.
Abdirahman Abduwali moved here from Somalia last year. Before today, he had never seen the inside of an NHL arena.
What was it like seeing this rink for the first time?
Big. It's like, I was so surprised, actually.
Connor Brown in on the attack, got it for Mitch Marner.
This may be their first Leaf game.
Good job, Hodo. Keep going.
But it's not their introduction to hockey.
There you go, Carl Vincent.
They're all members of an organization called Hockey for Youth, run by Mozine Hasham.
Hockey for Youth provides free access to equipment, to on-ice coaching, and field trips such as the one that these kids are taking today. Just keep the puck in front of you at all times.
Hasham says when he founded this program, he wanted to focus on kids in their late teens.
There were a lot of programs for younger kids. There was nothing to help newcomer teenagers, high school students. There is no natural entry point for them to play hockey.
He says it costs kids nearly $4,000 to play one season of hockey.
And we don't often think about who's being left out of the sport. So really, this is an opportunity for these newcomer youth to experience what is so Canadian.
These teens say getting to play the game has made them better spectators as well.
And now that you've played hockey yourself, do you feel like you'll have a better understanding of what's happening out there?
Definitely, yes. I feel like it's better because they are like playing for years and years, and they are much better than me. So I really want to see how they do, and I want to learn something from them too.
So you're going to try and bring what you see here today back to the ice?
Of course, I want to.
But there's still lots to learn.
I mean, you know what icing is?
Ice?
Icing?
No.
So for the last 3 months, they've been learning how to skate mainly, but January to March, we go over the rules.
Gave it back for Nylander around the goal.
It was exciting and fun, but most importantly, today's Leaf game gave these kids some lasting memories.
And I know that these kids here are going to remember this feeling today.
Yeah, Hashim says that 71% of new Canadians express an interest in trying hockey, but he says only about 1% of them actually ever get that opportunity. He's hoping to bring those numbers up with the help of the donors that help out with his organization by providing ice time and equipment and, of course, cash, so they're able to do things like they did today. And as for that game that they watched today, the Leafs actually were winning for a good chunk of it, but in the end, they ended up losing to the Minnesota Wild by a final of 4-3. So not all the best, but certainly not a bad day.
Still a great initiative. Thanks, Greg. Tennis fans still reeling after one of the best players in the world was beaten by a teenaged player from Mississauga who scored a shocking upset in New Zealand. Loretta Redekop has more on the 18-year-old whose next challenge is Venus Williams.
This could be a really special night for Bianca Andreescu.
18-year-old Bianca Andreescu, ranked 152nd, taking on the number 3 in the world, Caroline Wozniacki, stunning everyone.
I can't believe it right now. I mean, I've dreamt of playing on this stage against top players, and now I'm here. I played against one of the best, and I won, so really, I don't even know what to say right now.
Her win even more surprising since she was coughing during the match and says she's had back issues.
I managed to pull through. Like I said, I have no idea how.
She was born in Mississauga of Romanian descent. Her Toronto connections obvious in her social media posts. At her home tennis club, she was already inspiring the next generation, much more now.
I thought it was really amazing that she came all the way from starting to train here on these courts to beating the number 3 in the world, which is amazing, and it's also very inspiring.
It means that you can be any ranking and you can be anybody. It just means it's the mentality and it's how hard you worked.
As for some advice against her next opponent,
just play her game. Venus hits the ball very hard. She serves and whacks it, and you have to be very patient. You can't go up against Venus and say, I'm going to match you power for power.
Andreescu was also asked about Venus Williams.
First, I have to swallow this win, and then we'll think about tomorrow. But I'm honestly really excited just being here in front of an amazing crowd like you guys.
If you're thinking of watching, it'll be a late night. The two take to the court early tomorrow morning at 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
January is Crime Stoppers Month around the world. After a year that saw a record-breaking number of homicides here in Toronto, the local branch is hoping more people will come forward with tips.
You remain anonymous. Criminals don't. Thank you.
Crime Stoppers launched the month today with an event at Toronto Police headquarters. The nonprofit organization runs an anonymous tip line, an app that helps police solve crimes. This is their 35th year. They've fielded 156,000 calls over the years that have led to 11,000 charges. Crime Stoppers also pays callers for tips that lead to an arrest or charge.
Only 17 to 20% of the tips that we approve rewards for ever get picked up, which tells you in itself that the community, for the most part, are calling Crime Stoppers for the sole purpose of just making their community safer.
The board has approved hundreds of thousands of dollars in payments over the years. A Superior Court judge has ruled that some of the OSPCA's enforcement powers are unconstitutional and is giving the province a year to rewrite the legislation that governs the organization. The judge said it was wrong for the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals to have police powers, but not having accountability and transparency standards. The OSPCA is a private charity, but is responsible for enforcing animal cruelty laws. And without being transparent, the judge said it could be susceptible to external influence, and therefore there's no guarantee it will fairly and impartially administer the law. The OSPCA says it respects the court's decision and awaits the province's next move. People across the country who need to see a dermatologist now have a new option, one that doesn't require them to walk into a doctor's office at all. A couple of dermatologists in Quebec have created an app to connect patients and physicians. Lisa Xing shows us how it works.
What were you concerned about that brought you to this app?
Yeah, so I had some dark spots on my face that I figured were probably caused by the sun.
Leslie Macbeth travels a lot for work and found it tough to schedule an appointment with a dermatologist.
That would have meant going to my family doctor first and then getting a referral, and I just couldn't make my calendar work.
A friend referred her to this website, which Macbeth has been using for a month now.
How does it all work?
You go into your requests.
You answer some questions, upload photos of your condition, and hit send, and doctors respond within a day or so. The creators of Dermago are dermatologists themselves from Quebec. They wanted to alleviate long wait times for referrals and help people who live in remote locations.
Our system right now is overwhelmed. We're trying to unload a bit and increase access and give the choice to the patients.
And keep up with technology.
We need to be innovative. We need to keep up with the trends. We need to readjust if we need to.
There's a team of 6 dermatologists on the roster, including Robert Solomon in Toronto, who consulted with Macbeth.
It's very accurate. And patients I've seen on telemedicine who I'm eventually seeing in my office, where I said, okay, come in, we need to do a biopsy, the diagnosis doesn't usually change. It's a visual specialty.
And Macbeth says it's better than self-diagnosing on the internet.
You can go down that rabbit hole when you start to Google, like if you have like, you know, a weird mark on your skin or something, and you Google, you know, you start getting all these terrifying things.
Doctors who consult remotely are bound by the same rules as when a patient visits in person, but it's different than the government's telemedicine program. It's considered a private service, so you pay per consult. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
We're going to take a quick break, and as we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. We'll be right back. A food staple that's hundreds of years old is trending again. Fermented foods are popping up on menus across the city, from kimchi to meats. Talia Ricci digs in.
Items on Drake Commissary's menu are crawling with bacteria. But don't let that alarm you. It's good bacteria created through the process of fermenting.
Fermentation has been the basis for almost everything we do here. Starting from like the bakery program to the charcuterie, the pickles, we find it's like a great way to learn about the vegetables, the fruits we're working with.
Fermentation is a process that preserves food by using bacteria that change the flavor and composition of the product.
Pickled white onion cream cheese.
For this chef, it also adds an element of putting extra care into food that he says is lost when meals are mass-produced.
It's almost like experiments, and you don't really know 100% the way something's going to work out. You create the environment for it to flourish in, and you kind of guide it that way.
And while fermented foods have been making an appearance in more trendy dishes, in Korean supermarkets like this one, kimchi has been a staple for decades.
Kimchi is actually something that Koreans eat all the time, especially with rice.
Jay Lee says he's been eating kimchi all his life and is happy to see an increased interest in the vegetable-based dish.
We've been here since 1984. Basically, there are mainly a lot of only Korean customers, but we've seen a lot of influx of non-Koreans, and they buy a lot of kimchi now. It's definitely increased, and it's continuing to increase.
Experts have been studying the health benefits of fermented foods, including how they're good for your gut.
It's a bacteria eating our food before we eat it and then slightly changing it. And then when we eat fermented foods, we're getting a slightly different food that we're eating, and we're also getting those bacteria, which can be good for us. Fermented foods are potentially one way that we can improve the health of that community of bacteria that lives inside of us, and then in turn improve our own health.
We have like the sourdough bread here, which is fermented 24 hours.
A gut reaction that tastes good too. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
The team analyzing that snowman-shaped body snapped by the New Horizons spacecraft had some words of caution today about how to read the images accurately.
We do need to be careful about interpreting images like this because these are basically equivalent to full moon images that we see from our Earth, where shadows and textures are washed out. So some of these markings could be ridges, but we won't know for sure until the subsequent images are downloaded.
The researchers have been absorbed with studying images of the conjoined spheres dubbed Ultima and Thule, comparing small differences. The highest resolution imagery is yet to come as New Horizons moves deeper into the icy circumstellar known as the Kuiper Belt. Radio interference will prevent it from sending data for at least a week. When transmission resumes, the team will be looking for other snowman-shaped objects further afield. Nick, I was looking for snowman-shaped objects around the GTA, and I sure didn't see any this morning.
No, they didn't last very long. I feel like this is a deja vu. Didn't we talk about the snowman yesterday?
We did, yes, we did, exactly. Yeah. And I didn't go for that joke yesterday, so I thought I'd go for it today.
Well, here you go. They gave you another shot at it. No, not a lot of snowfall, guys. And actually, I'm going to put this in comparison to something else just a second where there was a lot of snowfall. But for now, let's talk Toronto weather here. Minus 1.5 degrees. That's the average daytime high. We're above that by just a little bit. That's the almanac board for today. No records being broken here as we move through the next few days, but it will be warm. Now, we talked about snow and snowmen. If you're looking for them, go out to Newfoundland. I just wanted to show you these numbers here. This was a storm system that passed through. This is actually, we sort of got clipped by this, but this is where the brunt of it was born. Gander International Airport picking up close to 60 centimeters of snow in one event with that. So if you're looking for the snow, you got to head out to the east there. For us, though, clearing sky cover. There's no snow in the forecast for the next few days anyway. We'll look at cloud cover for tonight. By the time we hit tomorrow afternoon, though, we're back into the sunshine once again. Winds at times are going to be about 20-30 kilometers per hour tonight. By tomorrow afternoon, though, they're going to be pretty much calm across the board, maybe about 15 kilometers per hour earlier in the day. In terms of temperatures, right now we're sitting at 0 degrees for the most part around the Golden Horseshoe. When you factor in the wind chills, feels a little cooler, -4, -5, but all of this is on the rise through the next 24 hours. Tonight, -2, -1 across the GTA. By tomorrow afternoon, clearing sky cover, highs to about 5-6 degrees in the forecast. And then we move through the next 5 days. And here's what it looks like. Friday, 5 degrees mentioned. Saturday, 5 degrees as well, the nicest of the 2 days on the weekend. The sunshine hangs around until Sunday. If you want to wash your car, probably a good time to do it there. But Sunday cools off, -3, overnight low of -11. And Monday to kick off the school week, a little bit of a rain-snow mix possible. We'll have to watch. That could be a messy one.
All right, well, that looks like a great weekend, though.
Yeah, no doubt.
Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
For the last few weeks, we've been looking back at some of the top stories that helped shape 2018. Tonight, we highlight October. Take a look. John Tory was re-elected mayor in October, winning a campaign marred by uncertainty as the city fought the province's plan to cut council to 25 seats. The province won, and so did former PC leader Patrick Brown, who ran for mayor in Brampton. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, and that's if you can get 'em. Recreational marijuana became legal in October, but in Ontario, the online rollout was far from smooth. Marked by delivery delays and confusion, storefront shops will still open in April, but will be limited to 25 province-wide until supply can meet demand. Canada Post getting part of the blame for delays in pot deliveries as a labor dispute sparked strike action with rotating walkouts in the GTA and across the country. The federal government passed back-to-work legislation in late November. The family of Honey and Barry Sherman offering a reward of up to $10 million for information about the murders. A tip line was also set up as the family continues their own investigation into the deaths of the billionaire couple. The family's lawyer accused the homicide unit of falling well below the professional standards they need to meet. The case remains unsolved with no arrests. 2018 closed with no arrests in the hit and run of Andre Alexander. The Toronto father and artist was on his skateboard when he was hit by the driver of a Toyota Yaris near Yonge and Sheppard. There were more than 60 deadly crashes on Toronto roads in 2018. More than 40 pedestrians and cyclists were also killed. A whole lot of garbage hauled out of the harbor in October. Scores of volunteers worked to clean up the lakefront, dredging up everything from golf carts to sunken boats. A stunt at Ripley's Aquarium made viral waves around the world. David Weaver is accused of going skinny dipping with the sharks. A man was caught on camera jumping into a tank not once, but twice, and then he took off. Weaver, who is also accused of an assault at Medieval Times, was picked up in Thunder Bay. The BC man is out on bail.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Saskatchewan has the highest rate of youth suicide among Canadian provinces, and the crisis has touched the lives of many people, especially in remote communities. But in one northern village, people are using photography to help heal, finding the beauty of life while capturing some breathtaking images. Madeline Kotzer has their story.
Skylar LaRiviere sees opportunities for photos almost everywhere.
It's cool. Awesome.
Looking up and down, the 16-year-old captures each snapshot with a careful confidence. On this cool fall day, she's with a group of amateur photographers. They're winding their way through boreal forest to the base of a waterfall to take pictures. A few months ago, it was a very different story. La Riviere was alone in the forest, ready to give up on life. She survived 3 suicide attempts in a span of 6 months.
I almost pulled the trigger to my head, but I I thought about it, like there's more to this than like what's happening right now. Like I have a purpose in life.
La Riviere got help at the northern village of Pine House's medical center. That's where she met Dre Irwin, a primary care nurse who invited her to join the Pine House Photography Club. Irwin discovered photography's therapeutic power during a painful breakup in 2015. The following year, he moved to Pine House, and one night, a routine trip to let his dog out turned into an awesome discovery. The sky was dancing over Pine House Lake.
I remember looking up thinking, what the heck? What is out here? Are you kidding me?
Irwin's Northern Lights photos started getting attention on Facebook from people in Pine House. Soon he realized photography could maybe help others who were struggling. On clear nights like this one, the photographers are outside. For many of them, these meetings have warmed up their world.
Everything happens for a reason, right?
Louis Iron joined the club shortly after his stepfather took his own life. Things looked dark for a while. The 15-year-old became suicidal. But once he started taking pictures, his perspective started to change.
I feel like God sent somebody to create this group because it's actually really, really helping me a lot.
Nights spent around the fire, taking photos, are a world away from the parties with drugs and alcohol. After seeing the difference photography was making, elders decided to introduce it into the community's addiction treatment program. Jenna Natamegan was one of the first to pick up a camera.
And you just forget about everything because you're too busy looking at the beauty. You're too busy getting that perfect angle.
The 33-year-old mother of 3 is a recovering crack addict. She took thousands of photos of the son during her month in rehab.
It takes all your problems away. That camera can do a lot to one person.
The Pine House Photography Club has caught the attention of social workers across Canada, and it's received a substantial grant from the federal government to set up a studio space. For members like La Riviere, it's illuminating a pathway forward into the future.
When I get older, I want to show them how much I became stronger and better, wiser.
Madeline Kotzer, CBC News, Pine House, Saskatchewan.
Just a beautiful story there. While coming in today here in Toronto, it was a bit icy, but it's been a slow warm-up. The question is, will it continue? Nick Cernkovich will join us with one last look at the forecast right after the break. Beachcombers ambling along the Dutch shoreline in search of treasure have been hauling in a windfall over the past 2 days. The contents of 270 containers swept off a large ship in stormy water on the North Sea are still washing ashore, and cleanup is underway. Some broke open, spilling car parts, IKEA furniture, flat-screen TVs, clothing, and light bulbs into the sea and onto multiple beaches. Just to make the new year a little more memorable for everyone, a young moose paid a visit to a Calgary neighborhood earlier this week.
I followed it out here to the backyard, and it pushed over a flower pot and seems to be having an enjoyable time now after feasting on my birch tree.
The moose, dubbed Molly by area homeowners, was in no hurry to leave. It strolled through several front yards, sampling various plants, of course, and then opted to spend the rest of the day resting in Harry Sambell's backyard. Back here in Toronto in the GTA, this photo was submitted by Window with a View 88 of wide open Kensington Market. Love that viewpoint on this one. And all the lines in the photo really draw your eyes in, don't they? Nick, what do you think?
Oh, they definitely do. You know, I love looking at these photos and trying to figure out where they're from.
I know, it's cool.
See
Some
how well
are
you know
more,
the city.
yeah, some are more remarkable, like that one, where you know it right away.
Where you know exactly. It was pretty iconic, exactly. I didn't see any snow on the ground on there, did you?
None.
No.
I don't think that was taken today.
No, I don't think so. We had a little bit last night. Actually, the roads got pretty icy last night, just as the temperatures hovered around zero. Tonight, watch for that as well. If there's any kind of residual sort of melted snow that's going to refreeze tonight, down to -2. By tomorrow, though, 5 degrees. We sit there basically through Saturday, and then it drops off a bit, but the sunshine's sticking around for the weekend.
And last night would have been a nice night for photos as well, with all the snow coming down.
Snow coming down and everything. Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. It kind of makes me feel like we're into that winter season.
Finally, it's been weird. It was 10 degrees just last
week. But you know what? We're watching for Monday because we might actually see some rainfall coming in again.
All right, sounds good. Well, that is our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Mike Wise has your next local newscast coming up at 11. Have a great night.